Thank you for joining me. My name is Zach, and today we're going to be talking about Kris. He's one of the villains in the Spellbound saga, but he doesn't come in until near the very end. We introduce him first when Dimitri and Laura visit the floating city. They're on this big platform where a whole bunch of people are celebrating 500 years of peace, and inside of the building that all of this is connected to, which is the floating city, they find Kris stealing the beak sword. It's a big sword that looks like a beak. I think I have a picture here of Kaya holding it. Princess Kaya and the royal family are the only ones that are able to use the beak sword for its appropriate ability. Anyone within the royal family bloodline is able to use the beak sword to create this beam of light. And Kris wants to take that power for himself, but he's doing it in secret. So later we see him in the stump field where these mecha loggers have been set off by another villain, and they're just chopping down trees everywhere for no reason. So the floating city and New Heaton both send an army of people out to go investigate. This is when Murdo, he's knight of New Heaton at this point in time, he finds Karsten hurt in the fields, just cut up by the sword. Kris had taken the sword with him to battle, thinking he could be using this weapon, which he wasn't of the royal bloodline, so he wasn't able to use it. Karsten found out that he had stolen the sword and was going to tell on him, so Kris sliced him to pieces with it, hoping to kill him. Well, Murdo finds Karsten, sends him back to New Heaton to be healed, and while he's there, they put a mask on him so that no one knows that Karsten's still alive. Well, Kris goes back to the floating city with the new knowledge that he can't use the sword how he thought he could. He has to have someone of the royal family use it. So, new idea entirely, Kris takes over the entire floating city, and he uses his illusions to make it seem as if the floating city had already been taken over. He created a fake illusion of the floating city and was broadcasting recordings of that city being taken over all across the world. So in the real city, people are seeing that it's actually being taken over by Kris already when it hasn't, and he's able to easily just make duplicates of himself and invade the whole city. We see him next in Autumnburg. He brings the floating city to the competition where he can compete for the light stone. Of course, he fails his mission, and when he leaves, he takes the floating city with him, and it's revealed then that it was an illusion the whole time, that the floating city hadn't really been brought to Autumnburg. People had already invaded it, so there wasn't anyone in there besides Kris to begin with. And Princess Kaya, she has been kidnapped inside the real floating city, which uses the air and bird stones to keep it afloat. Well, Kris has had someone repurpose this whole city into using the airstone and birdstone along with the energy blast that Kaya is able to make with the beak cannon to create an even bigger blast of energy out the bottom of the city. So he's using this floating city to fly all around the world and just destroy everything else. He just wants to destroy everything. He starts off with Springdale, where they already got the plant stone from. Luckily, they're not there anymore. He destroys the forest that the Luanishi tree is kept in. So he's the reason why there's no more Luanishi tree. Luckily for them, the tree had given Melina one seed and had been preparing for Shannon to grow it. And the last time we see Kris is when all the kingdoms throughout the whole world, all the different cities throughout the whole world have sent a bunch of air fleet ships in order to back the floating city up into the Verandia. The Verandia is a place that's like a big ring that kind of goes out into the ocean a little bit, where inside of that ring, no magic is able to be performed. Move this giant city willingly on its own, backing it further away into the Verandia, because the floating city itself can't just shoot all these little ships that are buzzing all around it, but they can blast at the city and move it where they want it to be. So Kris, unbeknownst to him, he moves the city right where they want them to, and the stones are no longer able to work in the city. None of the magic is working, so it's about to fall out of the sky into this ring, where the heroes have lined up all around the ring and are using their magic powers just slightly outside of it to hold it up. In the very last moment, the floating city is knocked out of the sky and explodes off in the distance somewhere in the desert, and we can presume that Kris has died. And that's the entire story of Kris. He's basically just a power-hungry knight, Birdman. They wanted to infiltrate the kingdom, usurp the throne, and just destroy the world. That was his plan, and he died in the end. Thank you very much for joining me. Maybe I'll see you next time for another villain. Have a good day. We see him again next at Autumnburg. He appears above where people are seeing in the real city, they're